Okay, this chapter is about operations and supply chain management. We already talked a bit about operations, especially when we talked about management and things like that, and expansion, and the other topic today is supply chain management. Does anybody know what supply chain management means, or supply chains? What's a supply chain? No.
From like the producer of the product all the way like how the product gets to consumers, like that whole process.
Really actually from raw materials to finished product to getting the product to the consumer, right? How do you get it from not before production, then you go through operations, then it goes through your distribution chain to the consumer, right? So that's what we'll talk about today. So let's talk about operations first. There are production systems, manufacturing systems, and service systems. Production systems are used to make products, right? Factories have production systems. They make things, right? They produce things, put things together and so forth. Manufacturing is a production system in which goods dominate the value of the product, right? And the service system is a product system which services dominate the value of the product, right? So they're not, a product is not exclusive of services. It comes with some kind of services, and the service usually has some kind of products involved too, right? So that's why they're not mutually exclusive, in other words, right? But of course, manufacturing system is where the product is the core product, or the core thing that determines the value of the product is the product itself. In a service, it's the service. So let's have an example. Give me an example of something that's produced in a manufacturing system, or that you're buying where it involves product and service, but the product is more important. iPhone. Yeah, there's some kind of service with that, kind of minimal. It's not really that great, right?
So there's Apple support.
Yes, yeah, actually, yeah. How about a service system where you're buying services where it involves, a lot of services involve some kind of products. Yes, Madison.
Is that therapy online?
Online therapy?
Yeah.
Yes, the service is very important, right?
Yeah.
There's really no product though. It's completely service, but yeah, yes, you're right, yes. And Diego?
Well, I was gonna say like softwares like Grammarly or Speechify and things like that.
Yes, the service, or how the service performs is what's important, right? Yeah, so. All right, next is, let's talk about production system model. You have suppliers. Suppliers, they provide the inputs. So you want to make something, give me a product that you're gonna make. That we're gonna make today, we're gonna take through this.
Fancy forks.
Fancy?
Forks, silverware.
Fancy forks, silverware. Silverware, okay, what kind of what kind of inputs are there in silverware?
Raw materials.
Raw materials, iron or silver, or whatever you want to use, right? And then you have a production process where maybe you have molds and it gets melted, put in there, and then dried. I don't know what else, you stamp the logo on it or something like that, and you package it, and it becomes an output. And that gets delivered to the customer somehow, right? That's a model for a production system, right? So the terms of a production system, you have to have a production facility, a place where this is going to happen. The site where the production takes place, the factory usually, right? Then you have components. Well, there are sometimes goods and services that integrate a product. It's not really going to happen in when you sell silverware, right? But let's think about something else that involves both goods and services.
Like phones?
Yeah, something maybe a little more.
Complicated.
It's a little complicated. Non-tech product.
Goods. I guess the grocery store.
That's really good. There's very minimal service, right?
You can get service.
You don't really get service,
You gotta return something.
but that's the grocery stores. provide that, not the producer of the product, right? Yeah. Diego?
Oh, I got tripped up on services. Goods, so it's like something that can go into goods and services.
Mhm. A product that also has product parts and goods parts, right? I'm trying to think too now. I'm blanking out. Yes,
If you go rent skis or whatever, you get the product of the ski and you also have the service being fitted to
Yeah.
your skis.
yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, ski rentals, right? You get it's really essentially a service, but you do get the product, which is a ski that you get to rent out, or even if you purchase it, it could be a separate retail store. But anyway, it's also the components that can go in there. And then raw materials used to produce the component, right? Production stages, during each step in the production, something else gets added to the product to eventually finish it, right? Let's define operations management. Operations management is the direct resources that are involved in the production system of a business organization. So you have domestic operations or global operations management systems, right? Domestic obviously is when everything is produced, originated in the country where the firm is originated in, right? So as a US company produces, everything comes from the US, right? And everything is produced in the US. If it's global, obviously you pull resources from other parts of the world. And that's when one or more of the production system direct resources originate from or are located in more than one country, right? So activities, procurement is acquisition of goods and services. So usually large companies have a procurement department. What could be another word for that? Procurement. Acquisition of goods and services. Diego?
Importing.
No, it doesn't, procurement doesn't have to be international. Yes, you say that again. Purchasing or buying, right? They're buying or purchasing supplies, materials, and other services that are required for their own manufacturing or their own production, right? Production transformation required by the production process. Let's say you're making bread. You have procured flour, yeast, salt, water. What else do you need? Maybe you're gonna add sesame seeds or something like that, right? Now production is where you actually mix everything and put it into the right temperature into the oven and then all the way coming out and packaged, right? That's production. Then you have logistics, movements of materials in the production system. How do you move things around? In the production system, not afterwards, right? We should have actually had that. Well, yeah, I guess, So within the production system, how to move things around or move to the next step and so forth. Research and development, designing of the product, right? You don't just design it once and that's it. You're gonna make that product forever. No, you keep redesigning, adding, changing, modifying products, right? That's all done in the research and development departments, right? What can we do better? What feature should the next iPhone have, for example? Or our next car release? Global procurement, one of the things managers have to make is make or buy decision, right? When you buy your source, how do you source your supplies, right? Determining which components and raw materials should be produced in-house and which components and raw materials should be acquired from suppliers. So should you source your own raw, let's say, let's take another product. Let's say you are a sandwich shop, right? And what do you need? What's the first thing you take out when you make a sandwich? Bread. You need bread. So you can make a decision. I'm going to buy bread from another company that's a great bread maker. Or you can say, I'm going to make my own bread. Right? That's the make or buy decision. If you want to, if you make your own bread, you're gonna make it, you're gonna have to have a facility to make your bread. Can I ask you all to close your laptops and put away your phones, please? Thank you. Okay, Narmeen, can you close your laptop, please? Yeah, everybody, please close your laptops, right? If you have other things to do, you shouldn't be in the class. Anyway, so, you do need a lot of times you will need a separate facility to make your own bread, right? You'll need ovens that you wouldn't need if you just made sandwiches. But maybe you do have a setup, maybe you do have something else that you use ovens for already in your bakery, in your sandwich shop, so you might as well use them to make the bread. Anyways, global procurement is when a firm buys components and raw materials from more than one country, right? And global production is when you make your products in more than one country, right? Give me an example that's not Apple. You know, Apple does everything. Yeah, they're always a great example of a company. Yes.
In the book, it's a great example of Boeing company.
Boeing, yes.
Yeah, the huge collaboration and on a large scale, how they produce airplanes.
Yes, and they have their components, they source them from different vendors. What is the advantage of global sourcing? Yes,
You can get advantageous prices due to price difference. You have more options, so you can pick the lowest available price.
yeah, yes, but to have
you're
multiple suppliers, because now you also have shipping costs, right? When you do
But
global.
maybe it's more important that you have an advantage of technology. I mean,
Yes.
you can buy a top engine for your airplane.
Yes, yeah. You're not limited to
Which is
your
hard
local
to
area, right?
produce by
Yeah.
yourself.
And another advantage of course, a company like Boeing can't have multiple suppliers of the exact same thing because there are not many companies that supply that. But in general, a lot of times companies in procurement, they have multiple vendors that supply the same thing, because what if one can't deliver the other one, you know? And if they're located in different parts of the world, that's even better, because sometimes their supply chains can break, because, you know, we had the Suez Canal incident. Was it last year or was it already 2 years ago?
That's like
2 years ago.
21.
Yeah,
21.
2 years ago, right? Where, you know, automobile production came to a halt because of that, right? So, but if you had another geographic area where you can get supplies, then you would buy more from there. So it's always good to kind of diversify your procurement, right? Yeah. And then anyway, global production is when you produce in different countries. You have to make those decisions based on a lot of factors, right? We talked about outsourcing. Outsourcing means when a firm has been making goods and services in-house, and then they decide to make these goods and services by hiring a contract manufacturer, right? Or by hiring another company to do that for them. We're gonna stop making bread in-house. We're gonna pay somebody else to make bread. We still want our bread recipe, but we're gonna pay this bakery to make this bread for us, right? Domestic outsourcing obviously is when you do it in your own country. Global offshoring is when the firm doing the outsourcing and the supplier that will provide the outsourced goods and services are located in different countries, right? And insourcing is when the firm has been buying goods and services from outside. They're now bringing it in-house and making it themselves. That's insourcing. Kazi.
I think another interesting example of global outsourcing, like we were talking about earlier, would be TurboTax or like Inuit. They outsource a lot of, I think they outsource a lot of their programming and stuff and some of their
Oh,
other
yes.
stuff to India now.
They do. A lot of tech companies do that, yeah. They outsource their software engineering to companies in India, who then employ software engineers in India. What is the advantage of that?
It's cheaper.
It's less expensive, and you know,
These
you have
people are really
access.
good too.
You have access to good software engineers, right? We don't have, I don't know, they say we still don't have enough here, right? Yeah. Yes,
At least like depending on the company itself, but the time zone change means that someone's working on a project 24/7. Like,
Yes, that
like
too.
when America wakes up, India's going to sleep.
Yes,
and
there's
when-
always
and
somebody
when America
working on
goes to
it.
sleep, like,
Yeah.
it just, it's a constant, like, cycle.
A common thing that's also outsourced internationally is customer service phones. I mean, customer service, right? And tech support,
This
yes.
is another thing that's outsourced internationally, but animation as well. Like 2D animation is almost exclusively outsourced to Korea nowadays.
Oh, okay.
Because we just don't have the infrastructure to do 2D animation in the US anymore. So if you see like 2D animation, odds are it probably comes from Korea.
Korea.
There's a few firms that do it in the US, I think, but
Mhm.
it's really expensive and it's a lot of work. So that's a lot of that's kind of like if it's not in Japan, it's probably in
And
Korea.
Korea.
Some companies, I think even in Japan, use Korean animators.
Yeah.
And then and then 3D, I think. 3D, yeah, goes to like India or sometimes like Singapore or like a lot of Asian countries, like is where they'll have like offices over there for 3D animation companies.
Yeah,
Like Sony Animation will have an office in like Singapore.
yes. And another really, another reason for that is also tapping into talent pools in different parts of the world. It's not just about cost, it's about talent pools, you know? But anyway, that's, you know, outsourcing and offshoring. Insourcing again is bringing it back in-house. Like, oh, we did have somebody else make the bread for us. We're actually gonna start making it ourselves now. Location decisions. Where are you going to locate your factory, right? Or your goods? So once an organization has decided which components and raw materials to make in-house, you have to decide what location you're going to have it. It consists of determining if making will be done at one or more production facilities, right? Maybe you're a chain of sandwich shops. Are you going to have the main corporate office where the main original sandwich shop make all the bread and then ship it to the other stores? Or is each store gonna have their own, for example? And now think about that on a global level too, right? Are you going to make, okay, so McDonald's in Russia, we talked about that before. They grow and make their French fries in Russia, and they grow the potatoes there too, right? Rather than making them here and shipping them to Russia. So, and then if these facilities will be located in one or more countries, right, depending on, again, where you're based, where your facilities are, where your customers are, costs, transportation, and all that. Yes.
I think one of the most interesting examples of this sort of thing that I've heard recently was Costco. I don't know if you know, but Costco's Kirkland brand is extremely curated. Like the products that a lot of the stuff that they use for Kirkland is like, it's usually like locally sourced or like if they have on the bottle that it's an olive oil from Italy, like that olive oil is from Italy. Like they're very, very strict about their Kirkland brand products. And yes, I thought it was like, there was one instance where they're over reliant on this company for chickens. And so to keep the company's price for chicken in check, Costco built their own chicken factories.
Yes.
And sourced chickens from farmers in the area. And they were able to start producing 2 million chickens a month. And because of that, or like, you know, like slaughtering, I guess, 2 million chickens a month. And because of that, they were able to keep, to regulate the prices of chicken in their store.
Yeah, they are basically producing their own chicken now, definitely. Yes, definitely. On the first part, I was gonna make a comment on it, that slipped my mind now, but anyway, the branding, the Kirkland brand, of course, anything that says made in Italy or it's olive oil from Italy has to be from there by law, right? They can't just wing it and say, we're gonna put 1% of Italian olive oil and say Italian olive oil, you know, it's
But
legally.
Costco specifically is very, very strict.
Yeah, I'm sure they're very strict and they stand behind their products and they do try to really, they really don't even collaborate with all other brands, with any other brand. They have to be quality brands. But the way the Kirkland brand works, it's a collaboration between another company that makes this product and Kirkland's co-branding. They don't make all those products. For example, you can buy Kirkland brand coffee beans, but then it says somewhere in the print, made by Starbucks. But they have a separate, the agreement with Kirkland and they make it for them. Because there's so many different Kirkland brands. They don't make toilet paper, they don't make coffee, they don't make all these packaged foods that are Kirkland branded and things like that, right? It's a co-branding situation, a lot of them, right? So some of them they do make, right? But a lot of them they don't. And if you look on the package, it will say who the original manufacturer is.
Would it be co-branding or white
Yeah.
labeling on the?
I don't know, co-branding, I guess, because
It would
it's,
still include the other brand,
the other brand is still written on the package, yeah.
so not Trader Joe's.
Not Trader Joe's, yeah. Yeah, Trader Joe's actually does something similar, right?
Yeah.
But,
They white label everything.
yeah, but they can't really, I mean, imagine that. I mean, all the different things Trader Joe's sells, they almost exclusively only have Trader Joe's products now, right? They can't possibly have a factory for every one of these products, can they? I don't know, I don't think so, because they're so different from each other. They're a retail store, right? We can look it up. I mean, we can look it up and see. Somebody wants to look it up right now, what they actually make and what they buy and co-brand or a white, what is the word you used?
White label.
White label, right? Yeah, so. Anyway, back to this here while Diego looks that up. Businesses face one versus many production facilities when making location decisions, right? And of course, each location involves a huge amount of cost, so that's a big part of the decision. Consideration for one versus many production facilities, the level of fixed costs associated with having more than one facility. Fixed costs, you're gonna have to pay rent, insurance, you have to have employees at that location, local taxes and all that stuff, right? So those are fixed costs, regardless of how many you sell, those costs are always there, right? And then the minimum efficient scale of production facility in comparison to demand for its output. So what's the demand and how scalable is each location? How much more can you produce, right? How much can you add? And then transportation cost, of course, is very important, right? If having a local facility outweighs the transportation costs, then you might as well do a local facility, right? But if not, you would reconsider. Yes.
Oh, my hand's not up, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
More location stuff. Consideration where to locate the comparative advantage afforded a location due to its factors of endowment. What are factors of endowment? Factor of endowments. Yes, Ellen.
Are factor endowments just how much of a certain thing you have?
Yeah, kind of what you have, yeah, your resources, right? Yeah. Availability of, and then, so you're internally, right? And then externally, the infrastructure to support it. What infrastructure exists around that production facility? Trade policies in that country, financial and economic risk, foreign direct investment risk, political considerations, political risk, right? All those things you're going to write about in your paper, by the way. So those are other considerations you have to think about when you think about a global facility or opening a local location in another country. Next topic is supply chain management. Supply chain is all activities associated with the flow and transformation of goods and services from raw materials until it's a finished product that you can then get to the end user, right? Together with corresponding flow of monetary funds and information about the product and all that support, that would be part of information, right? Supply chain management is basically managing that, right? You want to minimize the cost and maximize the value that you get to a customer or the end user. Here's an example, supply chain. You have several different suppliers that what are we making? We made tech products, we made bread. What else should we do now?
Basketballs.
Basketballs, okay. What do you need for basketballs? Leather, are they made out of leather?
Leather, rubber.
So let's say you have a combination, you have a leather ball, you have a rubber ball, and then you need thread for the sewing, and you need the, the thing where you put the air in, that valve, the valves, so a valve supplier, thread supplier, and leather supplier. It gets delivered to the manufacturer who makes the balls, and then the finished products go to, here in this case, 2 different distributors who work with different retailers, who then sell to a specific target customer, right? Now, the advantage of using these intermediaries, these are called suppliers, and these are called intermediaries, where it goes through what is the advantage of using these? No,
You don't have to be an expert in all these areas. You can be an expert. Let's say you're really good at manufacturing the basketball.
yes.
Then all these other groups, as long as you're making a really good basketball, they're gonna sell it.
You're not a retail store, you're a manufacturer, you make great products. You can't reach possibly everybody unless you go through retail stores. Retail stores, these intermediaries have wide reach, right? Yes, they want a lot of money. If they buy something for $5, they probably sell it for 20. And these buy for 20 and sell it for 40. Right? So what the manufacturer gets is very often only 25% of what you pay for the product because of the intermediaries, right? Questions? Yes.
So then wouldn't it, if the distributors and retailers are making a majority of the money, why is it better? Why wouldn't a manufacturer want to do those things then?
Why wouldn't they want to sell directly? Because it costs a lot of money to have let's say they use one of the retail stores let's take a grocery product. They use Safeway. How many Safeways are there in the Bay Area? 100 maybe. I don't know, maybe 50, right? You know how much that would cost to open, to have 50 locations, 50 stores where people go to, right? The other thing is, you might only make one product. Let's say you only make, what does Safeway sell? Food product. Give me a food product. Strawberries. Let's do a packaged product, because strawberries sometimes do go directly.
Granola bars.
Granola bars, yeah. You only make granola bars. There's nothing else that you make. So now you do compete. You don't want to use a distribution channel. Let's say you open 50 granola bar stores in the Bay Area, which is going to cost a huge amount of money. But all you sell is granola bars. Well, people that buy granola bars are usually also in the grocery stores and buy other groceries. And they happen to say, oh, I also want granola bars. They're not going to go to the granola bar store. They're going to go to the grocery store. Because one stop, right? They don't want to stop at every store separately, especially in American culture. We want one store where we can buy everything. We don't want to go, we don't need, we expect a grocery store to have a butcher, to have produce, to have a drugstore inside, to have packaged food, to have a fishmonger. We expect it all, right? Actually, in a lot of European countries, you go shopping and you go to a butcher, you go to a fish market, you go to the farmer's market and things like that. But here it's very extreme. We really only want to shop at one store and get it all there. So who cares if there's a store that specializes in granola bars? I'm just going to the grocery store and I can grab a box right there, right? So that's because that's where people go who buy granola bars. Does that clear it up? Okay. Best runs firm usually have the best supply chain, that's superior supply chain management, basically. It's actually very lucrative position to have at a company, supply chain management, right? We do have supply chain management class, operations and supply chain management. If you are doing the international business degree, you would take that class, right? It's very interesting. And you would work either procurement or, higher up and manage the entire supply chain. Anyway, it drives standardization and specialization, standardization and centralization, increases accountability for product quality and process control, or quality control, which helps with quality control, right? You don't run out of things, you pay more attention to the quality, reduces product cycle times because you don't want to run out of supplies. And then to make your product, if you run out of supply to make your product, you have nothing to sell, right? In the meantime, the consumer might go buy the competing product. You don't want to run out of finished products either, because your distributors are waiting for you to deliver, right? It decreases customer response time and overall reduces the product cost by having an efficient supply chain. Roles of information technology in all of this, what do you think? Does it matter? Big time, yeah. Because of IT and because of technology, a lot of these processes are automated, right? So the way it works now, a supplier is connected to the manufacturer, and as soon as the manufacturer runs low, and they can put a threshold. If we have 1,000 below of this part, notify the supplier automatically and let them know that they need to send the next shipment or place an order for the next shipment of a box of 1,000 or something like that, right? It's automated. Every piece that is used is tracked. So anytime you take something from your inventory, it's tracked that the inventory gets lower and all that stuff. But this talks about just in general, correlation between computer hardware and software arranged to transmit information from one place to another. Internet working is linking of separate networks into an interconnected network where the network retains its own identity. Again, when you allow your suppliers to come into your network and look at your inventory and things like that, right? It's also called extranet, I think. Yeah. More information, IT, enterprise resource planning system. So this is all the procurement and supply chain management and all that. It's all implemented into that system, as is accounting, as is sales, and everything is connected to that system. So the different functional areas of the business are in harmony and communicating with each other through those systems, right? Integrates the majority of a firm's business processes, execute all transactions related to the firm's business processes being integrated, stores each piece of data only once in an enterprise-wide database. So even though more areas might have been exposed to that data, it only needs to be stored once, because once it's stored once, it's in that database that everybody has access to, right? So no duplication work. Allows access to data and information in real time. You don't go back, imagine before computers what people did. They would have to have paperwork and, check off and scratch off and constantly print out new stuff or whatever, right? But now it's real time. They just used another 100 pieces of this in production. Immediately, everybody knows, everybody that looks into that sees the information that the inventory was reduced by 100, right? And operate in a client-server environment, traditional or web-based, cloud-based. Nowadays, it's cloud-based, right? Everything is in the cloud, right? It used to be client-server. The client was kind of like the main thing the company had. I'm sorry, the other way. The server was the main thing that the company operated and controlled, and then the clients were the employees or sometimes external parties who had access to certain parts on that server, right? But now it's all in the cloud. What does it mean it's in the cloud?
Outsourcing.
Outsourced. In other words, you don't have your computers that store that information on site, but you use another company like Amazon Web Services or Google or whatever, right? Yeah. Here's an example of enterprise resource systems. So, the customers and suppliers are outside and they have access to certain parts, customers has access to the marketing, sometimes to their own account and things like that. And suppliers primarily communicate with the operations module, right? You know, you have different modules and they are all in a single database. Oh, this is just a little more detailed. You have, you can have multi-language systems, it's when you deal with different languages. Obviously, multinational handles the accounting standards of multiple countries. There, you know, countries have different accounting standards. Although it's all, at the end of the day, it comes down to profit, but how you report things, how things are taxed and all that, right? It's different in different countries. And multi-currency. We learned about currency and what an impact it can have on your bottom line, right? And currency is also important when you're buying supplies from other countries. You're very likely going to be quoted foreign currency prices. And that was it. Let me go ahead and stop the recording.